night that changed everything in my life didn't arrive with warning signs or flashing lights. It slipped in quietly, like a whisper you almost don't hear until it's too late to ignore. If someone had told me a single evening could shift how I saw my family, my choices, and even myself, I would have laughed it off. But here I am, still haunted and captivated by what unfolded that night with my stepmother and her friends. The air outside carried the crisp bite of late summer, sharp enough to raise goosebumps on my arms as I leaned back in a lounge chair in the backyard. I wasn't supposed to be drinking, but there I was with a stolen glass of red wine in hand, trying to let the warmth dull the gnawing uncertainty about my future. I'm Jason Miller, 22, fresh out of college, back home until I figured out my next step. My dad was away on business, which left the house unusually quiet. Normally, my stepmom, Rachel, would be hosting one of her famous gatherings. Her parties were legendary: music, laughter, friends who always seemed a little too glamorous for our suburban neighborhood. But that night, there was no chaos, just silence, broken only by the gentle hum of the hot tub's jets bubbling beside me. I leaned back, staring at the curling steam rising into the night like secrets I wasn't supposed to know. My head drifted, caught somewhere between restlessness and calm, when the sliding glass door creaked open. I straightened in my chair, expecting maybe the family cat or the wind, but instead, Rachel stepped out. She wasn't alone. Two of her closest friends, Amber and Chloe, followed her into the yard, laughter spilling into the night with them. They carried cocktails, their faces flushed with the glow of wine and joy. Rachel spotted me first, her smile playful, the kind that always felt disarming. "Jason," she called, her voice warm yet teasing. "What are you doing out here all alone?" I fumbled for an answer, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "Just taking a breather," I said, holding up my glass like evidence. Amber tilted her head, her auburn hair falling over one shoulder, her grin both kind and mischievous. "You should join us," she said. "The hot tub's perfect tonight." Before I could respond, Rachel slipped the wine glass from my hand, her fingers brushing mine. It was the lightest touch, but it felt electric. "Come on," she said softly, her eyes locking on mine. "Don't be shy." I hesitated, frozen between common sense and curiosity. Part of me screamed to say no, to retreat into the safety of the house. But their laughter pulled me in, like a tide too strong to resist. I watched as Amber and Chloe shed their light robes, revealing bikinis underneath, and slid into the hot tub. Their laughter mingled with the water's bubbling, filling the air with a contagious warmth. Rachel lingered by me, her hand resting on my arm for just a second too long, before she, too, stepped in and glanced back expectantly. With a deep breath, I followed. The water enveloped me, hot and soothing, and yet the tension in my chest only grew. I found myself seated between Rachel and Amber, their shoulders brushing mine in the tight space. Chloe raised her glass, her voice light and teasing. "Relax, Jason. We're just here to have fun." But fun felt like the wrong word. The air carried a strange electricity, thick with unspoken possibilities. Rachel leaned closer as she handed me another drink, her eyes never leaving mine. I couldn't tell if it was the wine, the heat of the water, or her nearness that set my pulse racing. The conversation flowed around me. Rachel complained about work politics, Amber shared stories from her travels, and Chloe delivered her sharp one-liners that kept everyone laughing. I tried to blend in, but every brush of Rachel's shoulder, every glance that lingered a second too long, pulled me deeper into a storm I wasn't ready for. Then Rachel's hand found my knee under the water. My heart lurched. It was casual, maybe innocent to an outsider, but to me, it was impossible to ignore. I glanced at Amber, who smirked knowingly, and Chloe, whose expression carried a quiet curiosity, almost like she was watching me wrestle with myself. Rachel leaned in, her breath warm against my ear. "You're doing fine, Jason. Just let go." The words settled into me like a command and a comfort all at once. I wanted to pull back, to set boundaries, but the courage wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, my chest pounding like a drum. As the night wore on, laughter gave way to quieter moments, the space between us charged and fragile. When Amber and Chloe finally slipped out of the hot tub, wrapping themselves in towels and heading inside with soft giggles, it left me and Rachel alone in the steaming water. She lingered, Her eyes soft yet weighted with something unspoken. "Jason," she whispered, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Then she leaned back, leaving me drowning in silence and questions as she followed her friends inside. I stayed behind, staring at the night sky, my thoughts spiraling. That night had shifted something in me. I couldn't name it, but I knew there was no going back. The next morning, the house was quiet again. Rachel had left a note out for brunch with the girls. I felt relief, but also disappointment. When she finally returned hours later, her smile was casual, but her eyes gave her away. There was tension there, unspoken but undeniable. "About last night," she began, her tone cautious, "I hope you're not uncomfortable. It wasn't planned. It just happened." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I'm not uncomfortable," I said, though the words felt inadequate. "Just surprised." She smiled softly, nodding. "We're all adults here, Jason. What happened stays between us. But if you want to pretend it didn't happen, we can." But did I want that? That question haunted me for days. Every glance, every shared breakfast, every moment in her presence carried a weight we hadn't known before. One evening, Rachel knocked on my door. She looked hesitant, her silky robe brushing the floor. "I've been thinking about that night," she said gently. "And I was wondering if you'd want to talk more. Just us." Against my better judgment, I said yes. And that was the start of something I never expected. Our late-night talks turned into confessions, fears shared, laughter that was different from before. It wasn't only about attraction, it was about connection. We began to understand each other in ways I never thought possible. But the unspoken question remained, what would happen if anyone else knew? The world would never understand. But when Rachel looked at me one autumn evening and whispered, "I think I'm falling in love with you," the fear melted into something else. Because the truth was, I'd already fallen for her. That night in the hot tub had started as a blur of laughter and temptation, but it had unlocked something far more complicated. Love, trust, and boundaries that defied every rule I thought I knew.